Hello, good evening. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Lovely to see so many of you in here as per usual. Thank you to the usual clan that are already popping up saying hi, guys. We do appreciate you being here. So, again, thank you very much. Let's start getting some questions in there. There's none in there at the moment in the chat. Let's see what we can come up with tonight. Last week's Facebook Live was excellent. We had over 100 comments, mainly just because you were all ripping me for my tash. But other than that, there was some great questions. Mark's with me again this evening from the Technical Helpline. As always, we'd like to ask you, Mark, how you're getting on with the Technical Helpline. Is it still busy? Have the numbers been dropping? Have they been picked up? Is there any good questions that you've come across?
The numbers are ever increasing. Some of the usual questions that we've been receiving on the helpline. Quite a lot of questions on bonding for EV charging installations. They're coming thick and fast. Some coding questions to do with the ICRs. So the usual suspects, really. Let's hope, see what we get tonight, and hopefully we can answer a few more.
First question then, straight into it. What are the requirements for earthing metal tray work? Earthing, bonding? Ooh, another question. Tray work will be carrying twin and earth with light fittings mounted to them and a separate tray for data cables, all tray mounted within the building.
Sure, yeah. So generally there's no requirement to earth tray unless you're going to use that as a CPC, but generally where you've got class 2 cables installed on the tray, if the tray isn't in contact with true earth, so therefore doesn't meet the definition of an extraneous conductive part, then there's no requirement to bond it either. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, you'll be relying on the CPCs of those class 2 cables.
Good stuff. Yeah, the Tash is back. It's cheers, Andrew, for mentioning that. Always keeping a smile on our faces in here. So appreciate you dropping in this evening. Hi, if the back boxes are wooden for light switches, do we have to change it?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
If the back boxes are wooden for light switches, do we have to change them?
Not necessarily. It depends on sort of how long they've been in there, whether there's any signs of sort of charring or overheating from sort of conductors. But it's good practice to sort of recommend that they're replaced. But as I say, it's the inspector's risk assessment really on the likelihood that they are actually going to impair the safety of that installation.
Okay, we'll probably spin it a little bit of a different way for you, Mark. If you was carrying out an EICR and then you saw some wooden back boxes, would that be coded differently to, let's say, for example, if you was going to change a light switch? What would you come up with as a code for, or what would you suggest a code for wooden back boxes?
If you were going to recommend that they were going to be replaced, then a C3 would be appropriate in the circumstances. I think I would be talking to the client and perhaps recommending it. If they're going to be part of sort of ongoing works, that would help to for the decision to be made. But otherwise, they could be left, as I say, if there's no signs of charring, or there's signs of any overheating gone on in the past. I think the inspector would have to take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. And speak to the client regarding any kind of additional works going on at the time, perhaps. Mm-hmm. It might also depend on the extent of any other remedial works that have been highlighted.
Yeah, definitely. Today I visited a domestic property having a lighting circuit with no CPC at any lighting points. With a consumer unit change, what's the best route to go here to certify the board change? Same way as you would always do it, Mark, with a EIC.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's down to the inspector to determine how safe that circuit or circuits are. The general recommendation is that for the circuits to be safe in that respect, then class 2 equipment would need to be installed. Mm-hmm. So if there's any items of class 1 equipment the initial recommendation would be to replace those for Class 2 equipment. There's further guidance in Best Practice Guide number 1, which is available off of our website.
That's my bit. That's my job to promote that.
Sorry?
So that's my job to promote all the best practice guides.
Beat you to it. So yeah, and there is a clear process to follow within that Best Practice Guide number 1. Section 10 refers to lighting circuits where there's absence of CPC. But the easiest thing to recommend is that if there's any items with Class 1 on the circuit, then they should be replaced straight away before any further checks are carried out.
Yeah. So as Mark's mentioned there, I'll normally talk about Best Practice Guide number 4 when we start to look at EICR coding. So it's Best Practice Guide number 1. You get it exactly the same way as you do Best Practice Guide number 4. Go onto their website, electricalsafetyfirst.org.uk, and then you go to the professional resources part, and you can download them as many times as you wish to do so. I'm sure you're probably sick and tired of me going on about best practice guides now, but they are really good and really useful to have, especially if you have a number of engineers across your business where you need them to have all of them if they're unsure and stuff as well. Facebook post on a forum. I'm not sure we want to get into this one, but we're going to anyway. Non-RCD circuit in an airing cupboard, or a cupboard for that matter within a bathroom, limits the zone, but if opens up, is it in zone 1, 2, then code 2?
I mean, it's down to the inspector to determine how effectively that cupboard may limit the extent of that zone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, generally, we talk about full height partitions, sort of, 2.25 metres tall or greater. I mean, you can take into consideration such things as which way the door may open from that cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
Take into consideration how well does that door seal that cupboard and prevent any,
moisture,
splashes of water potentially from getting into the cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
Again, all of those things will be taken into consideration to give the most appropriate code.
Okay. SPDs on TT systems. Could you be a little bit more specific for us, Nath? I see that you've made a comment here, but it doesn't really leave us with much. If you want to elaborate a little bit. Someone said, wonder if one day your tash will meet your beard/chin strap. Again, not needed. Comments like that are not needed. I struggle in this department for facial hair, so yeah, we'll move on quickly. Somebody's put here, do I still have a BMX? Unfortunately, no, I don't. Dual RCD consumer unit with 63 amp RCDs on a 100 amp DNO fuse. Is that a C3 on an EICR? And I'll see where he's going with this, Mark, because there was a slight change to the regulations, wasn't there, in regards to the 63 amp RCDs and having that bigger fuse at the front end. Is there any way that they need to, or is there anything they need to be aware of when they're coding it? Would it be a C3?
I mean, it depends. They can take into consideration the diversity and the load profiles. It might be that as long as the load profile doesn't exceed the rating of either of those RCDs, mm-hmm. that could be a good factor to take into consideration. I think it's chapter 536 relates to overload protection.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at that part there, Mark, we also take into consideration, don't we, like you've mentioned, all of the loads that are on there. So if you're using your engineering judgment, you know that what you're putting on that, let's say, for example, a bank of 5 circuits are on there, you typically wouldn't overload that RCD, would you, if you was designing it well?
No, that's right. I mean, I think you certainly wouldn't if you were designing it. I mean, we are talking about existing arrangements, but no, certainly from a new install point of view, I think it'd be easy and straightforward to put a higher rated RCDs into that fuse board. I mean, the regulations that are particularly pertinent are 536.4.3.2,
mm-hmm.
Overload protection of RCCBs and transfer switches. that's one regulation. Another regulation refers to the relevant design current should not exceed the rated current of an assembly or rated current of a circuit. So that's an English reg 536.4.202. It says there is one, that reg there says overload protection shall not solely be based on the use of diversity factors of the downstream circuit to achieve overload protection. The rated current of the overcurrent protected device shall be selected according to manufacturer's instructions. Going back to the initial reg that I stated, 536.4.3.2, it says, for overload protection of RCCBs and switches, the rated current of the overcurrent protected device shall take account of the manufacturer's information. In general, the overcurrent protected device is installed upstream of the RCCB. It says the rated current of a switch or RCCB may also be based on the application of diversity factors to the downstream circuits. Okay, so again, it's where we say, it's dependent on the profile of the load. It's for the inspector to determine that.
Sitting on the fence as ever, Mark. Appreciate that. Evening. Three-phase install within woodworking shop. As AFDDs are yet to be available for triple pole, would 300 milliamp RCCBs used as a DB main switch give sufficient cover? It would all depend on what you're actually trying to achieve within that system there. They may be fine for the fire protection, but again, AFDDs do a completely different job to that of RCCBs. So again, it's maybe worth having that chat. Do you know of any ways that you can maybe make them three-phase, similar to how we used to with the breakers and with the pins through them on the switches?
So I mean, there is a design standard for safety in. Are we talking a school woodworking shop, or are we talking commercial?
Doesn't say. It just says woodworking shop.
Oh right, okay. I mean, traditionally 300 milliamps used for fire protection, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there will be probably requirements where there's socket outlets not exceeding circuits with at least one socket not exceeding 63 amps. There'll be a requirement on there to maybe provide the RCD protection and to meet your disconnection time as per table 41.1.
Yeah.
But it will depend on the earthing arrangement as well. You'd need to consider 411.3.3 for the additional protection where there's socket outlets, or provide a suitable sufficient risk assessment that determines that the RCD isn't required.
Okay. Do you use your mum's curling tongs? No, I don't use my mum's curling tongs. It's moved now, Mark. I know we like to have a laugh and a joke in here, but I also like to try and keep it quite serious in the sense of technical Q&As. Appreciate the humour though from everybody. Installed a board. Cooker is tripping RCD due to element. Can I sign off the install?
I mean, we wouldn't recommend that until you can be sure that the circuit is safe for re-energizing and safe for using by the end user. But I mean, modern cookers these days, they don't often sort of suffer from that unless there's a particular problem with the where that cooker's installed.
Yeah, so, he says it's a board change, so it could be that of an old cooker, couldn't it? It may still be suffering from that, but the recommendation would be that you wouldn't actually energise that circuit. You would leave it either disconnected, or whether you disconnect the oven and make the cooker plate behind it and that side of it safe. You could also do that as well, couldn't you?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we'd say you'd need to be sure of the root cause, and as Jake says, disconnect it if it's a problem until the problem can be repaired or solved some other way. So If it can be left disconnected and you can confirm that the circuit is healthy in all other respects, then absolutely, but you would need to be sure of that first.
Okay. 10-year-old block of flats, gas meters outside in boxes, currently no bonding installed, never been picked up on gas safe. It's very difficult to bond from the meter. Could we fly bond and earth at the back of the socket? Water's plastic, so fine with that. Ooh.
No, I mean the requirements are 544.1.2, I think it is, that where the gas meters are external, you can bond the flat at point of entry. It's generally sort of the gas safe guys that want to see a bond at the gas meter. But as I say, you do have that option in where there's high-rise, multi-dwelling units, i.e. flats, to bond at the point of entry.
Okay. What type mains come into the mains? Okay. House fed via 100 milliamp RCD via a switch fuse. What SPD type is recommended for the house board?
For the house board, well, I mean, generally for single dwelling units, at the moment we're saying that there's no specific requirement unless the value of the installation and any electronic devices and what have you sort of justify the installation. But that's where the electrician should have a word with the client. Put it in writing. Discuss the merits of having SPDs installed at sort of quote or estimate stage, and ask them if they'd like them considered.
Yeah.
If they don't want them considered as part of the work, then the electrician should document that on their certification.
And all signatures on that as well are welcome.
Yeah.
What Richard Harrison has asked Mark, because apparently he missed the call, he's deeply sorry, he's telling me, what was the outcome of the segregation of safety services, i.e. fire alarm with data, CCTV, etc.?
Oh right, yeah. Let me just refresh my memory on that one. So there's no requirement. I'll need to get back to Richard on that.
Okay.
Before
No worries.
Yeah.
Richard, hopefully you've heard the man there. He'll contact you again, so hopefully you don't miss the call this time. I know you're a busy chap, but make sure you keep your eyes peeled for the phone call. Staircase has plastic pipe conduit for communal areas lights. Can be coded as a C2 or C3. That would all depend on the situation. We would probably need a bit more detail around that question as well, wouldn't we, Mark? We can't really rule out. It depends on. It says communal area lights, so I'm presuming it's going across the ceiling. If it's going across the ceiling in a communal area, it's got the potential to premature collapse, so long as that there are plastic saddles and there's no metal saddles there. We could probably afford a C2 towards that, couldn't we?
I mean, if it's in a communal area, is that the question relating to incorrectly supported cables? Is that? Right?
I would imagine so. It says staircase has plastic pipe conduits for communal area lights.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, communal areas, if it's going to affect a large number of people, during and it runs as part of a main evacuation route, then it may well be a C2. It's for perhaps the inspector may have to ask a few more questions on site about that to find out, if it is a main evacuation route, for example. Otherwise, the inspector may well justify with a C3, but any code applied would need to have sufficient commentary behind it to justify that code.
Okay. Someone's put here, Mark, they tip their hat off to you. How on earth does he know the regs so well? That's what happens when you deal with them day in, day out, and then just staring in that big blue book all day long, isn't it? Well,
that's it. We've got it. We've got the imprint across our forehead where we're leaning down on the desk and in the book every day. So, yeah.
A periodic emergency lighting certificate highlights various deviations from BS 5266 in an office area. It's now having a refurb, including adding extra emergency lights. Do they need to bring the office up to standards? That's a good question. Very good question.
It is, yeah. I mean that's quite a complex question as well, because if it's having a refurb, are there any internal walls going to be moved? How big is this refurbishment? Because if there are any internal walls that are going to be moved, and as a result additional lights or some of the existing lighting is going to be moved, then they would need to be installed as per the current standard, and equally a revised risk assessment would need to be carried out, a fire risk assessment in line with the fire regulatory reform, fire safety order 2005. So
it's not the same as 7671 really, is it? Because say we saw something that was old in an installation when it came to BS 7671, we'd kind of say, well, we're doing this and it's nothing to do with this, but because you're adjusting the whole system would effectively have to be up to standard and meet that risk assessment, as you've already mentioned there.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be honest, depending on this isn't a BS 7671 question, you're quite right, but in the order of things, depending on the size of that refurbishment, perhaps the risk assessment should take place first, because often the recommendations will be forwarded on the type of system that should either be upgraded to or put in from afresh.
Okay. Can you confirm that the person who carries out the design of the project is the responsible person who would sign off for the design section on electrical certification and not the installer? You're absolutely right, Gavin. That would be the designer. Whoever's designed the system would sign the part of the certificate that says design. I think the clue's in the title there, so I think you're just trying to reaffirm what you're already thinking. It wouldn't be the installer. They would sign the construction part of the certificate. In a bakery, what? Oh, sorry, go on.
Was that a different question? Was that based on electrical installation? Was it?
Yeah, that was a separate question. Sorry. Next question.
Sorry, Jake. Just remind people, whoever signs the construction side should be issuing that certificate. Okay.
In a bakery, what IP rating would you recommend? And could the environment in a bakery become hazardous area and have to be certified separately? Ooh, another good question. Top marks to you, James.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it would follow a risk assessment, because it could well be included as a hazardous area where you could have build up of dust inside equipment, flour dust inside equipment. So possibly, but a risk assessment would need to determine that. Otherwise, general requirements of BS 7671 would apply, in that the equipment would still need to have a suitable IP rating, for that type of environment. So, any equipment installed needs to be suitable for the environment. 133.3 and 512.2.1.
You're just showing off now. The chap said it was a commercial woodworking shop. Back for the question. Let me just try and scroll up and.
And sorry, I have to. The requirement for the RCD was for circuits up to 32 amps, not exceeding 32 amps.
Okay.
And for portable equipment used outdoors as well, up to 32 amps. So, or a risk assessment that determines that the RCD isn't required.
Okay, next question then. Existing domestic dwellings with 63 amp switch fuse at the origin, sub-main wired in 16mm PVC T&E. No way of telling if the cable is within 50mm depth.
Oh, okay. So is this is for condition reporting, I'm guessing, and
yeah, I would presume so.
For existing cables, again, yes, the inspector would need to sort of take into consideration sort of how long the installation's been in service, because if it's been there sort of 10, 15, 20 years, you would take that into consideration. Guidance in the best practice guide number 4 recommends in such circumstances a C3, but it is the caller thinking about fault protection or like overload protection. Sorry.
Okay, well, we'll ask him and see what he comes back with. If he does, Jonathan, that is, if you want to come back with what Mark's just said there. Sorry, late joiner. Opinions on plastic consumer units under wooden staircase or in the route of only fire escape. We use best practice guide number 4, as I've always mentioned. It states in there that if it is under a wooden staircase or in a sole means of escape route, so long as there's nothing else wrong with that plastic consumer unit, it would be a C3. If it wasn't under the stairs or wasn't in the fire escape route, it would be just left alone, so long as there's nothing else wrong with it. If you're seeing signs of thermal effect on that consumer unit, though, we would then say, you'd want to be offering up a C2 for that. So hopefully that's cleared that up for you, Rob. I think we're all caught up. We're all caught up, Mark. We've still got a lot of people in there, so we've got a few minutes left. If you've got any more questions, then we'll take some before we start to wrap things up. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. He says, I've taken the mick enough, so I'll give you a compliment. You have beautiful eyes. Thank you. It's going to be a short one tonight, which is a change. We always seem to be running over. Is there any more questions before we start to wrap things up? Thank you to everybody that joined us on the webinar for last Wednesday as well. We had a good time. There was around about 850 mark. There was 850 people joined in for that one. Lots of questions coming off the back of that as well, so we'll pick them up next Monday. Also, just things to mention as well, we do have another coding clinic webinar next Wednesday. A lot of people still finding them interested, so if you do want to sign up to those, keep your eyes peeled on the social media channels, and that way you can sign up as well. Richard, yes, mate. We've just covered that off, and you might have not heard us. We did say Mark wasn't too sure on the segregation. He needs to have a recap and have a look at it again. Please do keep your eyes peeled for the phone call. He does have your number, so he will give you a call to go over that as well. Consumer unit above a cooker in a cupboard, is it a C2?
Not well, unless you think it's going to impair the electrical safety of the installation. I think it would be, quite hard push to issue a C2. It's probably a question more about accessibility. 132.12. So, if it's difficult to actually work on and to gain access, you may not even be able to continue with the inspection until it's rectified, possibly. Mm-hmm. So on that basis, maybe a C3. Yeah. Again, it's going to be down to the inspector on that to determine, the likelihood of impairment of safety, or is it just an accessibility issue?
Okay. Can you elaborate on the consumer unit under the stairs and in a hallway or common ways? At what point would you recommend moving or building a fire-rated cupboard? Listen, we go on about this a lot, and again, it is in best practice guide number 4. It gives you clear guidance in that document to say what is a C3 and what is not. It does say in there that if the plastic consumer unit is just sitting there quite happily and it's not under a wooden staircase or it's not in a sole means of escape route, then there would be no code. So at that point there would be no need for you to put it in a fire-rated cupboard of any description. If it's under a stairs or a wooden set of stairs or in a sole means of escape route, it could have a C3 afforded to it, or it should have a C3 afforded to it. The point of moving that goalpost and then when do you start putting a fire-rated cupboard on it, that would be down to the client, would it not, Mark?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, as always, we are looking at the electrical safety aspect of any installation. We're also looking at the potential for a fire as kind of almost not a secondary consideration, but certainly the inspection is all about the electrical safety. Can the user of that installation carry on using it? So if it's been like that for 15, 20 years or whatever. I mean, if it was going to affect a larger number of people, then that could have a bearing on the coding that's issued, because the risk is a lot higher. Again, we've covered this off, previously, but that's where talking to the client can often help in these situations.
How many times will an SPD protect an installation? I may get this wrong, but I believe it's around about 15 times at a full strike. And at that full strike is when they start to deteriorate. So if you said you've got an installation that's having 15 full strikes and you've put it in and it's gone out within 6 months, you've got bigger issues there than just an SPD. You may want to get in contact with the DNO about their supply if it's being caused by that and it's not of lightning strikes. The standard that they're designed to does say around about 15 times. I'm not 100% sure, Mark. Do you know the answer? I was led to believe it was around 15 full strikes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were sort of told the same as well by various manufacturers that we've spoken to over the last couple of years. But I mean, what constitutes a full strike? I mean, I
believe it's that of the full rating of the device that constitutes that full strike. Paul, we would be, it wouldn't really necessarily be for us to comment any further than over what we've been told of that of 15 full strikes. If you want some more information, it may be best that you speak to the manufacturers of said product. Is there a reg relating to cooker isolation switches not in the same room, Mark?
There is, yeah. It's a 537 reg. There we meet 537. That says it's got to be either obvious by its position or suitably labelled. So it can be in a different room as long as it's suitably labelled.
Would that constitute an MCB that was labelled at cooker?
It could be, because I mean an MCB, as everybody knows, can be used as a means of isolation. I mean, ideally, I mean, it depends how far away that consumer unit is from the cooker. But absolutely. So in terms of does it make the installation unsafe? Not necessarily, because you can isolate it back at the fuse board. Yeah, so regulation 537.2.7.
Okay. So there is a reg relating to it, but what does that say? Does it actually say that you can or can't do it?
No, it says each device used for isolation shall be clearly identified by a position or durable marking to indicate the installation or circuit that it isolates.
Okay. So hopefully that's cleared that one up for you, Sean. Next one. Before we start to close things down again, on a TT system, do you have to record the ZS on a circuit as a ZS can't be met?
You would, yeah, because it's going to be, the ZS is going to be met by the RCD. So it won't, the ZS will be too high for the overcurrent protective device. However, the RCD will provide that earth fault protection in the event of a fault to earth. And so table 41.5, I believe, gives you typical ZS values for common types of RCDs. Just bear with me. I think it is 41.5 on page 64.
Okay. Does gas and water bonding need to be separate, or can one join onto the other, then one bond to the consumer unit? Can't find anything in the regs saying that they have to be individual. They can, right. they can, can't they, Mark? They can be one conductor. However, they
can be one continuous conductor.
That's what I was just about to say.
Continuous, so that in the event, a bond it comes away from one of the services, at least the other service is still bonded. You won't find it in the regs. It's in the British Standard for Protective Earthing of Electrical Installations, BS 7430.
Quite really going to town with the reg numbers and the standards this evening.
Amended 2015.
Okay. What code on an EICR would you be given if sockets on the skirting were plugging in and cables had a tight radius on the floor and some plugs are difficult to get in? I think that would depend on the damage, would it not, Mark? If there was sufficient damage to the flex of the socket outlets, then the code would be attributed differently to that of something that's showing no signs of damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's signs of damage on the cord, at the time of the inspection or the plug, it could be a justifiable C2. Again, you'd have to put as much information down on your observation code, or it may be you have a conversation with the client to leave that, to not use that particular piece of equipment, and you might be able to issue a C3. Again, it's talking to the client and just ensuring that, if that is the case, you may be able to issue a C3.
Okay. I can see there are a few more questions, but that's going to be us for tonight. We're keeping Mark from having enjoying the rest of his evening. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to wrap things up. As I've already mentioned before, when there's no questions, webinar next week on coding. So please make sure that you are there. But from me, unless there's anything else you want to say, Mark.
No, not from me. Just thanks, guys and girls, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.